next speaker, a little bit of a state of the city address, our mayor of Hillsdale, Josh Paladino.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Josh. Became the mayor pro tem since the last time I was here speaking to you all. So I'm going to give an update on some things that are going on. Adam Stockford resigned in, I think officially in December, moved out of the city, get some much deserved, much needed rest with his family outside of local politics. It can take a lot of a toll. Thought I'd first respond to one thing that's happening right now. You may have seen it on the internet already, is that, excuse me, recovering from a cold. The Officers Compensation Committee, or Commission, this is a local board in the city that's appointed by the mayor, which is me, and then confirmed by the council. They determine the salaries of the elected officials in the city council members and the mayor. So it's one of the many boards and commissions in the city. I think we have something like 17 of these in the city. This is sort of another problem that I'll just mention right from the outset. There's so many of these boards and commissions in the city and the county level that it's often very difficult to figure out where decisions actually come from. It's so dispersed. It's one of the problems actually that the founders didn't like with the system under the Articles of Confederation. There's all these committees and subcommittees, and it was difficult to actually locate the responsible parties so that you can hold them accountable during an election. Okay, so this board gathered today, and they determined that the mayor's salary should increase from, I think, about $3,000 or $4,000 a year right now to $25,000, and the council members, I think, from $1,000 to $2,000 to $10,000. So, in principle, might not be a bad idea. The problem right now is that we have what is called a council manager form of government. The council manager form of government originated in about 1895 with a man by the name of Richard Childs, with help from a couple university professors and philosophers, notably Woodrow Wilson and Charles Beard. And they established, or they theorized the council manager system as a way to respond to what they saw as modern deficiencies in the political system. They thought that politics was too much controlled by the party process, and by that they meant that politics was too deeply controlled by the people through their elected representatives. They didn't like that. And so they devised a system where expertise or professional management could replace the incentives of elections and political control. In other words, control by the people. So they devised this system. It started to take off. I believe the first city that adopted it was 1905, I think Staunton, Virginia. Jackson, Michigan was actually also an early adopter in the 19-teens. And they adopted this system, and they admitted after the fact that the reason that they did this was to put professional, managerial, and business organizations in control of government rather than party organizations. Because those business and professional organizations respond to profit incentives and business incentives, whereas political organizations respond to the interests of the people and their votes. Okay? So one of the main tenets of this system is that there's a separation of politics and administration. This is a key for Charles Beard, Woodrow Wilson, all of the progressive philosophers of this area. They have this idea that the administration of government is separate from the political decisions of government. That actually doing the day-to-day business of governing is a separate activity from determining what types of laws you should make, how much money you should spend, how much you should pay people. So today, those decisions, those political decisions, are made by council and the mayor, but the actual activity of administering the government, of enforcing the laws, of setting policies of how you're going to administer the government, those are all delegated to an unelected bureaucracy. Okay, this should sound very familiar to what you see at the state or the federal level. You have the Congress and the state legislature or the council at the local level sort of making policies, but it always feels very disconnected from the actual administration of the government. They don't really seem to know what's going on in the government. That's because they're not involved in the activity of governing. So I think this separation between politics and administration is an essential way to understand our political life today. We can't really hold our elected officials accountable a lot of the time because they don't really seem to be exercising the powers that we gave to them. Someone else is exercising those powers for them. You can see this very clearly with Donald Trump today, right? Especially during his first term. Oftentimes, or even today with all of the injunctions, you often say, is he really even exercising the full powers of the presidency, or are people exercising these powers on his behalf? Okay, so we have the same problem at the local level, in my opinion. The council is made up of 8 members with the mayor. As a group, they choose a city manager. This city manager has a contract that can then extend beyond the term length of the council members. So the manager, who is in charge of all of the administration of the government, can outlive the elected officials. So for example, I was elected in 2022. I will never have a vote on the chief administrative officer of the city. I'll never have a decision over who that person should be. Again, think of Trump with some of these so-called independent agencies, which are a fraud, which are illegitimate under the Constitution, these independent agencies. He tries to remove the head of, what was a recent one? The FAA? Was that the most recent one? Yeah. Thinking maybe the FCC too. There was a fight with the Federal Communications. There's a fight with the National, or the Federal Reserve, trying to remove the chairman, and we're independent. We make decisions that are apart from politics because we are experts in the management of aviation, communication, the money supply, right? The most fundamentally political questions. The money supply, communication, transportation, these are given to experts who are apart from political control, very similar to what we have at the local level. Okay, so let me bring this back around to the compensation question. I do think that our elected officials should be compensated. And they should be compensated well, but only if they're engaging both in determining political questions and in the actual business of administering the government. They have to do both, because administering the government is 90+% of the work of governing. It's almost all of it. And it's also key to know how to make political decisions. There's something almost embarrassing to me about the council and the mayor coming up every 2 weeks after having read some statements and recommendations from the city staff, and then voting on those recommendations, when for the past 2 weeks they haven't known how anything in the government operated. So they're just so divorced from it that they don't really have the knowledge set to make those decisions. Okay, so what would it take for me to support something like raising the salary of council members or mayors by 10 times? You would have to actually put them in charge of segments of the government. They would have to be going into the office, maybe not in a full-time position. I think in a city like Hillsdale, the mayor could maybe even be part-time, maybe 25 hours a week, something like that. But they would need to go in and actually do this work. What would be required for this? Well, Michigan actually has a lot of flexibility for local government. I've been talking about this for a few years, but I want to get people to continue to think about this. We have both the Home Rule City Act, which governs cities in the state of Michigan, and it allows them to devise their own charters. The problem is a lot of these were established in the progressive era, so the 1900s to the 1920s, 1930s, or the New Deal civil rights era, 1930s to 1960s. Michigan, or Hillsdale's, for example, was last revised in 1958. So they have all of these managerial prejudices in them. They give no authority to the mayor and the council. They are oversight boards or councils or committees. You can think of Congress in the same way. You listen to these hearings, and the Congress members, we're going to provide oversight of your department, your agency. Are you providing oversight? You govern them. You make the laws. You tell them what to do. You don't just watch over them sort of vaguely. You can command them. You can withhold their funding. You can fire their employees. You are in charge. But the council acts in the same way. We provide a sort of vague oversight, but we don't actually govern. Okay, so what I would suggest is charter reform that re-empowers elected officials. Now people get scared of this because voters can make bad decisions, right? And then you have someone in charge in the mayor's seat or the council seats who don't really know what they're doing. This is a problem in any type of representative democracy. But it's always a trade-off between whether you want the people to exercise their judgment directly over elected officials and to entrust that judgment to the people, always with referral back to the ballot box if the people are duped by a bad candidate or maybe their judgment is bad for an election, which does happen, right? Democratic elections are not infallible, as we know. Or whether you want a professional who is hired by the council, who might check all the right boxes, but is totally unaccountable to the people directly. Okay, for the county commissioner system, this is actually a really interesting one that I've just been exploring more lately. The County Commissioner Act in this state actually allows any county to devise its own charter, to establish its own rules of procedure, to establish its own laws to govern its county, the county. Only 2 counties in the state, as far as I can tell, have actually taken up this charge to devise a home rule county, meaning one that is established by the people. Wayne and Macomb, I believe, have done this. And you can actually get a model that looks more like a Republican model that we have. Well, there are problems at the federal level and the state level today. They're not perfectly Republican. But you can get models that look more like the founding model, where you have a strong executive who is in charge of administration, directly accountable to the people, where you have a large legislative body that accounts for all of the interests of the people. I think back to the founding era, the cities and counties of the founding era. They would have representatives for a few hundred people, a few thousand people for a county. Now we have these tiny legislative bodies drawn from large districts, and you don't really know your representative. Think of your representative as one of 1,000 people. That person lives in your township. If you live in the city, that person lives within a square mile of you. That's the Republican system of holding elected officials accountable. You're gonna see that person at the grocery store. You're gonna be able to pick their ear. So it's bringing back these Republican elements, a strong executive that's directly elected by the people, a large legislature that has full control over the structure of the government, the budget of the government. And these options are available to us right now, but they require actually not that much of an uphill battle. Just to initiate the petition for a county charter revision, or we would have to create a county charter, I should say, or a city charter revision, only 5% of the voters who voted in the last gubernatorial election. So with a few hundred votes, you can initiate this process to totally reform the structure of city and county government. I also brought this Franklin quote that I taught in class about the salaries of elected officials. I know it's a hot topic. Some conservatives have the idea that elected officials shouldn't make very much. They should sort of do it for a love of country. Others have the idea that there should be a very strong financial incentive with strong anti-corruption practices. I think there's merit to both, but I wanted to read to you what Franklin has to say about this. This is from an essay called Information to Those Who Would Remove to America, about people who want to immigrate to the United States. He wrote this in 1782. As every free man, to preserve his independence, if he has not a sufficient estate, ought to have some profession, calling, trade, or farm, whereby he may honestly subsist. There can be no necessity for, nor use in, establishing offices of profit. So what he's saying about the United States is, it's expected in the United States that you have a job. You have a profession, a calling, a trade, or a farm, or you have an estate, meaning you're financially independent. You're independently wealthy. Because we expect people to have a job, we shouldn't have offices that are profitable. There shouldn't be positions in the government that you want to get in as a sinecure. As a position, like an ambassadorship to some random country. Right? You can sort of send off your no-good son to be an ambassador somewhere and he makes $500,000. We don't want those types of offices in the United States. They shouldn't be profitable to you. On the other hand, you have to balance this with the idea, especially in the founding era, that if you're going to give up your job or your profession, at least part of the time, you need some compensation. Otherwise, what happens is that these people with estates, those who are financially independent or retired, become the ones who totally govern the political process. So the founders recognized this balance that you have to have between offices that are too profitable and offices that are only accessible to the elite, so to speak, or to the retired. And we see this in local politics and state politics all throughout the country. You have to be retired or independent to serve on these things because the meetings are at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday and they only pay you $100 to go there. You can't take the day off work to do that. Okay, he continues.
9 a.m. on a Tuesday, what are you referring to?
Oh, sorry. Our esteemed commissioners. Yes, that is a tough time for many people.
That's done for a different reason, though.
It's a good time. 9 a.m. on a Tuesday, everyone's alert, ready. Okay, the usual effects of which are dependence and servility. So if you make the office profitable, the elected officials become dependent and servile to the government. In other words, to the permanent bureaucracy. They want to serve that thing because that thing gives them their continuation in office. Unbecoming freemen in the possessors and expectants. Faction, contention, corruption, and disorder among the people. So when they have these offices of profit, they're striving for the offices not out of a love to serve, not out of a civic duty, but because that's the way to get rich in the United States. We sort of have an odd situation in the United States. It's not actually particularly profitable to be a state legislature or congressman today, but if you sell yourself, it's extremely profitable. So how exactly do you manage that problem? It's hard. Okay. Wherefore, whenever an office, through increase of fees or otherwise, becomes so profitable as to occasion many to apply for it, the profits ought to be lessened by the legislature. If too many people want an office, you got to reduce how much it's paid for, because they're probably running for it just because they can make a buck. Okay. Sorry, that was very long on this officers' compensation committee. So yeah, this vote's going to come up in 2 weeks. I'm voting no on it, not because I oppose in principle paying our elected officials more, but because we have to restructure the government, which I'm not even sure if the people will accept at this point, to be fair. Most people are very comfortable with a professional managerial bureaucracy. They tend not to trust your average elected official, right? They're just politicians. Don't trust them to administer the government. But we need to make those structural changes before we just start increasing the profitability of office. You have to arrange the incentives properly before you start handing out cash, in my opinion. Okay. A few other things we're working through right now. Oh, yes.
On that topic, if there were a vote to restructure, who would write the charter?
Yes, for both the county and the city, you have to elect a charter revision commission. These are elected either at large or by ward in the jurisdiction. So in the city of Hillsdale, I presume, unless the council made a change, but I think we would keep our current ward structure, we would elect 8 members from wards, and 1 member at large who would serve as the presiding officer of the Charter Revision Committee. These members cannot come from the current body of elected officials, so you would need people who are committed to understanding quite a large body of work. You have to make these laws compatible with the Home Rule City Act. They have to be compatible with state and federal law. So you need to do hundreds of pages of reading. You would need to know what is the ideal way to structure the government, right? And of course there are going to be some local accommodations here. Do we necessarily need a bicameral legislature and a local government? Probably not. But you'd have to work through a lot of these questions, and the Charter Commission has up to 3 years to come to a determination and put it for a vote before the people. The determination that they make with that charter can also be rejected twice and revised and resubmitted. So there's ample time for deliberation, for submitting things to the people, allowing them to consider them. But to your original question, it would be a separate election for a new, think of it like a convention, a temporary convention. Same at the county level. Yes. Any other questions on that before I just talk about a few other things that we're working through right now? Yeah.
With increasing their pay, okay? Now, each one of them is voted in for the people, by the people, and of the people. As you know, as well as I do, that most of them are there for themselves. They're not there for the people. Now, how are they going to vet some of these candidates that are going to run to see are they for the people, or are they for themselves, or somehow check them out and see what is their purpose, what's their reasoning for wanting to hold an office. Mine was because I care about my town, I care about my people, I care about the people that that knows every place here. But for some reason, we had those that didn't want that type of person in the office. They wanted the yes people, or the people that get along with them, not get along with the people. So this is the question I have. Money-wise, I think, a workman's worthy of their hire, but are they being workmen? Like I brought up to others. Why is it that every councilman is afraid to talk to the constituents? They won't have a town hall meeting. The people come in there, they have to stand and only have 3 minutes to talk, but yet they can't hold an actual conversation with the representative from my ward. Is that right?
I'll actually make a comment about that last thing. So in the first 2 years I was on council, there was the stone wall of silence. You come up and give a comment and they look at you and they say, send us an email, meet me afterward, and then they scurry off after. That's actually not in our rules of procedure. The presiding officer, which is me now, can allow anyone to address anyone at any point. There's no reason that you have to wait for another, for an answer at a later date. The real problem is that this is such a part-time position, and the expectations of our local officials are so low that if you ask them a question on the spot about the budget, and I'll include myself in this to be totally fair, the budget's very complex, it's a very part-time job, they often just don't know the answer. So instead they'll say, well, rules of procedure, I can't answer you right now, send me an email later, and then they'll ask the city administration for the answer to the question and then give it to you. So yes, I like this system now where you have a few minutes to talk, but if you want to answer questions or ask a question to a council member, they can address you now. I think that's sort of the least we owe to our citizens if they're paying us anything to be up there, or even if they've just given us the trust of the office. As to the first question, thank you. As to the first question, how do we vet them? How do we hold them accountable? As Publius says, this is sort of the risk of republicanism. It's the genius of the whole system, the genius of the American people. Vigilance, manliness, courage, knowledge of their rights. It just means educating the people and ensuring that they are the ones vetting the candidates before they get into office. Beyond that, you don't have many other protections in a Republican system if you put the wrong person in until the next election. Yeah, John Paul?
One of the things really quickly is the reason why they wouldn't answer back is because constantly you'd always get on just one vote. Because you can't go against Dave Mack, you can't go against the administrator. See the same thing in schools. Since we got a permanent administrator, then all you have is an elected board that just goes ahead and goes along with whatever the administrator says. I got a suggestion, why don't we just get rid of all the elected boards and just hire the administrators then, right? But that goes completely against our Constitution, so my other suggestion would be get rid of the administrator, period.
Yes. Let the elected officials serve in the role of administrators, not doing the job, but always having oversight over budget, personnel, policy, procedures, so that when you go to the ballot box, you know you are electing someone who will have immediate control over the function of that institution. When they delegate it to an administrator, it's so difficult to locate true political responsibility. It's very obscure. Yeah?
Do we still have the electricity out to the lake? In other words, we had our electricity up, we built a beautiful plant up in Litchfield. And then Obama made us tear it down, gave it to people in Jackson. They tore it down. And now, that was a great program up there in Litchfield. And now, since Obama made us to tear it down, it's probably only 20 years old. And it was clean electric. And it was coal, but they were saying scrap it. They had it so it was very, very clean. And so when they arrest him and they put him in jail for being he's not American. He's not American. He wasn't born in America at all. So he's gonna be arrested. So he's got millions of dollars that he's taken. So we can get the money away from him to rebuild our plant. Now, I'd like to see our plant, build a plant so we can do the whole county.
It would be great for the city and the county to have an independent energy source. I think that should be a top priority, that you're not dependent on an outside grid.
Do we still have it? We haven't torn that out of the plant on Lake.
I'm pretty sure the plant on the lake just has diesel generators as
It
far
is
as.
diesel.
Yes.
Back in 2005, our county was the only county that didn't have electricity from the East Coast. You could see it from the sky. It's just kind of like a pimple of darkness.
It is. It is.
They turned that one basically. They got it going. The diesels got it going. But we had more people, so we had to be careful.
The power outages are an odd thing. I don't remember these as a child. I grew up on the east side of the state in Canton. I think I remember one power outage around 2005 from a severe storm. But it seems like power outages are sort of a routine occurrence here. And they said we're not hooked into the grid, but we don't really,
We are. That's the problem. We are hooked into the grid.
Or sorry, we couldn't hook into the grid when the power went out. So it wasn't even necessarily a problem with our lines around here. We just weren't getting power from the grid.
Well, it was coming from Jackson, basically.
Yeah, right. We're dependent on it for other counties.
But they're getting rid of all the water generation, coal generation.
Yes.
Jackson's doing this. They want the windmills and they want.
Yes, we had a vote on that on council last year. The state is pushing a 50% green energy mandate on us by, I think, 2030.
2030 mandate.
2030? Yeah, 50% and then 100% by 2040? 2050?
Not gonna work.
Something like that. Hopefully, the Republicans will take control and They might push it back 5 years.
Part of the problem is you
Um,
can't because consumers isn't really controlled by our government. Consumers is the one that buys our government elected officials, if we remember at the last election.
Yeah, we'll see if they're
They
able
do
to
all
push
their
these things
DEI and
back.
everything's still there. They're still keeping their DEI, it won't go away.
Yeah, and even the solar farm that we built, that we bought into, it goes into a general grid. It's not even necessarily set aside for Hillsdale County. So we're paying into these green energy projects, and they don't give our people in the county any more energy resilience.
Well, because-
I asked the consumers guy once if they would put solar panels, consumers would just come in and put solar panels on every residential home. He said we'll never do that.
There is that possibility that we just don't.
Consumers won't do it because that'll go against what.
Yeah.
Our electrical, our prices are gonna go up 3 times.
Yeah, it would be an interesting world if everyone just had their own independent energy generation and we didn't need the power companies anymore. That might be nice.
Let's start
Yes,
with
are you ready to move on?
3 more questions.
Oh, okay.
We'll be done.
Yeah.
3 more questions.
He never finished your thing. Yeah, finish your stuff.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just going to talk about a few more things that are going on right now. So, in order to build the roads, we're still using what are called special assessment districts, where they take the properties that are adjacent to this improvement, usually road construction, sometimes sidewalks, sometimes water or sewer, and they charge an additional assessment, which comes all at once as a bill. And if you don't pay it, it's immediately a lien on your property with interest. This was one of the main reasons that I ran for office initially. And the reason for these, they say, is that we have no room in the general fund budget in order to pay for these things. These are the sort of things that we have to prioritize, though. We have millions of dollars in administration that the people never say is primary for them. The people always say they want infrastructure and public safety first. And yet the council repeatedly gives these budget items the sort of scraps at the end. So one of the main things I want to focus on if I stay in this office, or even the next 2 years, regardless, is to reprioritize the budget so that infrastructure is getting the first funding for whatever we need for that year, and everything else is going to have to make room for those budgetary priorities. Now, the special assessment districts actually can make sense in some instances. Think of like when you have a huge manufacturing company that owns a whole, like, half a mile of road or something. It might make sense there that they pay a little bit of extra because it doesn't have a general economic benefit for all of the taxpayers. But these are very minor situations, and we are using special assessments as a rule. So that's one of the other main things that I wanted to mention. Trying to think if there's
I have
any.
to put out roads.
What's that? Yes.
I heard there's gonna be a bike lane when they're
Oh,
exploring.
the bike. I forgot about the road diet. Yes. Yeah, this is an interesting one. The Doge project might be actually cutting funding for this, I read, for MDOT, so I'm not sure if it's happening. The basics of the idea is
But we gave
yes.
money to explore it though, right? That's what I understood.
Yes. Yeah.
So we're giving money to explore a program that's gonna be cut?
It was spent a few years ago. I think it was something like $15,000 to study whether that we could apply for this grant for the road diet. I'm not exact. So many of these things are just presented as routine budgetary items, and you're sort of stupefied. Okay, I don't really understand what this language is. No one has explained it to me. It came up at council 5 minutes ago. This is another problem. We get the packet on Thursday. The packet that I just received at 5 p.m. today for our Monday meeting, 235 pages. I read for a living. I cannot read 235 pages and spend time with my family and enjoy church on a Sunday. But you get these requests and it just looks totally routine. You don't really know what it's aiming at oftentimes. But yes, the road diet, they want to turn Broad Street from Carlton, so the 3-way intersection at City Hall and the Dawn Theater there, to Steenberg, so the end of the fairgrounds, into a one lane in each direction with a middle left-hand turn lane. The claim is that this is going to slow down, calm traffic. It's called a road diet or a calming, traffic calming. It's going to slow down traffic and reduce accidents. I'm sort of skeptical because the middle lane is usually used as a left-hand turn lane anyway.
Out in Carlton, it's used as a passing lane.
It is used as a passing lane.
I got a picture of it just the other night, somebody passing in the left turn lane.
From City Hall to the churches there on Bacon, it's usually used as a left-hand turn lane, it seems, but some people can definitely use it to speed around. So the state is going to give us $1 million in what is called a TAP grant, a Transportation Alternative Program grant. This grant requires that you install transportation alternatives, which would mean bike lanes, might include things like buses, but it seems to be mostly used for bikes. And the idea is to impose green energy alternatives on citizens. So if you want to get this $1 million in cash, you have to accept bike lanes in your downtown. Jonesville has already accepted it. They're doing this. They're doing it to downtowns all over the state. I'm not actually that fired up about the road diet because I don't think it would necessarily calm down traffic that much. But what really bothers me is that the state puts these random strings attached to everything. So you pay your gas tax, you pay your sales tax, you pay your income tax, you pay your property tax, how many different forms of tax, you pay your licenses and fees when you go to the DMV, and they say, here, you can have some money back for your roads, and I'll say what this money is going to be used for in a second, if you structure the roads in the way that we tell you we want them structured. Very frustrating.
And it can be used for the roads that need it.
And you can't use it on a discretionary basis. You have to use it how they tell you to use it. So it's going to be used for 4 main areas. I think 2 of them I actually like. The parking lot behind the post office is going to be expanded. So Union Street, you know how Union Street has that weird tiny little road there? They're going to just cut that off and expand the parking. I think that's actually a good use of space. But then they're going to cut off that the part that cuts through City Hall, Hillsdale Street, where you veer off to the right into City Hall. They're going to block that off and make it a one-way. I'm not sure what this will do to police response time if they have to go around. It's somewhat skeptical. The other 2 changes, they're going to cut off Cook Street by St. Anthony's. St. Peter's. You know how St. Peter's has that little street there, right past Bacon? They're going to cut that off and then put an entrance on Bacon. And then right past Bacon Street, if you're going south, you can veer right to go onto Budlong. And there's sort of 2 entrances there. It's a little bit confusing when you first come here and you're like, where do I turn in? Where can you turn out? They're going to make that so that there's only one in and out. So some of these changes to me actually seem fairly logical, like they would improve parking and make things sort of streamlined.
They're only giving us
But
$1
it's,
million.
what's that?
They're only giving us $1 million.
$1 million.
Yeah, that doesn't even take a 10-foot of road when they go to repair it.
$1 million would cover, I think, a half a mile, something like that.
1 mile.
1 mile, maybe. We're told it's like $2 million a mile if you have to do repairs below the surface.
25
So
years ago,
they're
it was
giving us
$1
$1 million
million.
that's more than a mile.
Probably of just the surface repair, yes. So anyway, that's what that's for, and we have to accept this all with the bike lanes or not take the money. If we accept the $1 million, there's a 20% match from the city. So you'll get this money if you do the bike lanes, if you also pay 20%. So these are the trade-offs we have to consider. This is one of the main things we need to advocate for our governor and our legislature. Abolish the grant system. Give all money back directly to the people on a proportional basis with no strings attached. Allow their elected representatives to spend the money and allow the people in that jurisdiction to then judge their representatives about how they spend the money. Sorry, do you need to take me off? John has a hand up. Okay, sorry, I'm just going on and on.
I got a question and then I got a statement real quick. One is, I hate putting you on the spot because my favorite picture is holding a Josh Paladino sign. outside the office, even though I didn't make a difference for you. I'm just so glad you won, because of Penny Swan, you know? So, what happened with you in the college? You got fired. So what happened? Are you allowed to talk about that? And then one, yeah, but I mean, I want to know if the college is like holding you hostage.
Send an
to-
email, he'll get back with you.
You know, Josh, I mean, you don't think that's in people's minds? That you're going to be doing the bidding of the college because of your career. That's number one. And then two, don't forget, we're down $400-something because of Kevin Slack too. Yep.
We'll get that back to you
Okay.
at some point, with interest. Yeah, no, everything's fine. I'll say this in general about the college. If I had one complaint about the college's involvement in politics, is that the average people at the college are not involved enough. There's this idea that the college is sort of like exercises influence over elected officials, because 4 people directly work for the college on the council. I can speak for myself. I think Jake Bruns would be fine speaking for me. No one at the college ever advises us in any way about how to vote. They never reach out to us directly or anything like that. There is no influence. My complaint would almost be to the other extreme. I want them to come out and oppose things that their principles that they teach would suggest that they should oppose. I would almost want them to be more active in directing municipal and county affairs. I know that might be somewhat unpopular. And I don't mean as an institution. I think that would be inappropriate. I just mean the average people at the college should get more involved in city and county affairs.
Absolutely.
Josh, just 2 points real quick on that. It's not so much that people think the college is flexing any control over the people that are there that are college affiliated, but it's the same thing of why do you see people that still aren't going to U of M wearing a U of M coat going rah rah blue? Same thing, everybody's true to their school. So that's kind of one of the things that people look at. So if that's not brought out, anytime there's a secret, the people will ascribe the worst that they can to it, not the best. And so that's part of the fault of the people that are connected with the college, not bringing that out and saying stuff and bringing it out. Or getting the common people, like you said, at the college, far more involved, because I agree with you, they are not, and they should.
Yes, thank you. Okay, thank you all. Very good chatting with you. I appreciate it. Thanks for your questions.
Thank you, Josh. That was great stuff. We appreciate it. Yeah, appreciate Josh coming and being open and honest and transparent. We need that. Appreciate the questions and everything too. So.